Hello, welcome to the Reframing Mindset podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity to practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, so welcome back to Reframe Mindset Podcast. My name is Colin Brooks. I know basically this episode we're going to go into talk about one of the the funniest, I think one of the funniest exams that I've actually ever done. And basically it's technical drawing in high school. Because this exam is fundamentally different from, for one, with it was so I was doing the science field, and this subject was one of the odd ones out because this had it never really had much to do with science, but when they technically explain how it relates to science, technically, so you get the subject. The subject is named technical drawing, but it's technically not a science subject, but technically we're just working with it, So basically, so we're doing this subject, and because the teacher that we have, he was a pretty chill teacher, that the teacher that taught us also was the one that he was on the basketball team, he was a manager for the basketball team, so that information will kind of be relevant in the future. So basically, what happened is I couldn't draw. I couldn't draw. When I do visual arts, I did pretty okay, to get a grade, and we did pretty solid. But in reality, I was never really a good draw person. But technical drawing is something like architecture. We do it's introduction to architecture in the if you want something to relate it to. So basically we go in and we draw things like cubes, and we use something called a T-square, which is basically a ruler that look like with a T with it, And we learn to draw a lot of stuff. And then the technical part of it now will be up where we start drawing things like houses, all kind of stuff, houses, maybe like anything that we can draw. So that's basically the essence of it. So what happened now, the first couple of days now of those classes, now we actually went there, and it was just the boys, because the woman's equivalent of technical drawing, well, I won't say woman's, because there was two choices. You could either choose technical drawing or food and nutrition. So in food and nutrition, you learn how to cook. And majority of the girls choose that class, and one of the boys that was in science. And the rest, and all boys choose technical drawing so it was basically food and nutrition was technically the girls' class, and technical drawing was the boys' class. So what happened was basically it was just about 9 of us doing the technical drawing class, and we go in, we learn about technical drawing, learn how to draw, and we have this white, we learn the basics, things like bordering the paper that we are using, and all kind of stuff. And then after some time for our monthly tests, we will get something to draw, and then what happens is we can either we draw it in the class, or we can draw it elsewhere and then carry it in. So that's basically how it goes. So we get the things to draw, and then what happens is you have all the time until the due date to actually draw the items, then carry it in. So basically what happened was over time we actually started sculling that class. We never actually went to that class because for one we're doing science. So we say, oh, technical drawing, we don't. Both of us say don't need it. But while some of us scull the class, some actually take it serious. Some actually took it serious and whatnot. But I was one of them that sculled the class and such. I usually play Call of Duty, and whatnot. So with that being said, our grades were bad because we're not going to the class, and what we're drawing is not really. Some were doing well. I wasn't really doing well, so grades were bad. Grades were bad. So back to what I was saying, that this teacher was our um, basketball manager. The weird thing happened was no. Yeah, so the class was usually on a Friday. So some Fridays now we usually have a basketball game. So the funny thing is though, I have to actually go to the class that Friday because if I score the class that Friday, then they'll show up to play the basketball game. It's something you look kind of suspicious, suspicious. So that was one of the weird thing about having him. And it was 2 years we were doing this course, this subject. So that's that. So and I was on the basketball team since 10th grade. So I had to every time there's a game that day, it only makes sense that I had to go there. I think I missed once, scholar class one time there, and actually went to the game, and it was pretty awkward, pretty awkward. But the next part of it I want to go now is when we're doing the big exam. So that's the CXE. So that's the national exam for it. So basically, somehow, some way, I eventually got signed to actually do the exam. So that was one of the 8 exams that I was doing. And what this, if you forgot, what the CXC is basically is, you do the CXC, and then based on the grade you can get, you can use that to either look at job or apply for sixth form or community college, or you know. hmm So that's the essential use of doing the CXC. So basically now, being signed and whatnot, we're all in. So basically the first thing that we have to do now was the SBA. So the SBA is basically now, I had to invent something and then draw a technical drawing of how the item would look. So it would be like me inventing a phone, and then I would draw how the phone would look and the different specifications. Draw like an outline. I explain a different part what that is. Basically, now, as I said, I had no idea why I was doing technical drawing. I could not draw, and and at the time I had barely any imagination, so I had no clue how to really get that. So eventually, what happened was there was a class. So I'm in science, 10 science and 11 science. There was a class called 10 that specifically deal with those subjects. It was called um, mechanical technology. So all those people are basically doing those technical drawing and all those drawing technical stuff. So eventually what happened was I found out that some of our people are actually just paying someone to do a drawing for them. So I end up having to do the same because it's their specialty. Why not? Why not? Why not let them do it? So basically, somehow, some way, I got it done. It was clutch because when the person did it, it was the day the SBA was supposed to be submitted, and the person did it so quick. Yo, I guess it was worth the money. To how they did it the day, and I got it way before the time was due. And it's like, yo, that person that did it, it was a girl. Yo, she's a boss, bro. So basically, they did it on 17, and I passed the SBA part. So boom, Only thing left is for me to pass the exam. So basically, how the exam went is that, as I said, I never really care about this subject. I was lucky enough to reach this far, so I was just chilling. And if you remember those times, I usually procrastinated a lot. So the day before that exam, one of my friends, who basically, people who say he was bad at the subject as well, got the year before me, got one in the subject, and getting a one means that you basically get like 100%, and that was a shock to everybody. So basically, the day before, I messaged him asking him for some tips, and he basically gave me some tips to look at, and then I took my time. I was watching some YouTube video to see how to draw certain things. I never practiced one drawing. I just look on videos and just try to learn. And then the next day came, the Monday came. I was like, yo, it's time to actually go time. So let's go. So the exam has two parts. So you have the drawing portion, and then you have a multiple choice. So the funny part now was the first part, the drawing exam. So I went. So our normal exam would be is that everybody sits around a chair and a desk. You get a paper, and you do an exam. You can't copy, you can't look. If you look, they assume that you're cheating and they might take your paper. And since it's a CXC, like this is a national exam, if you cheat or something like that, you basically you failed. You failed and you're done. So cheating is something they don't want to do. This exam now basically is a desk, and you have it's like a architecture desk, this big giant desk, and you have a stool, and then you have the paper, and then everybody same thing. But the funny thing about what I realized when doing this test, when I actually went in there, because I was in science and I did it with some of the 10 mechanical technology people, as I mentioned, that were doing this as their whole course. Like this is what they do on a daily basis. So when the exam starts and thing, I see them just walking around like, yo, like everything is good. Like basically that class, and basically what they're doing, some person is buying a rubber, some person is doing this. Meanwhile, I'm just standing at my desk doing what I need to do. I'm like, yo, oh, there are these people, and the invigilator is there just watching. I'm like, yo, bruh, what in the world? Basically, I'm doing the exam now, and some of the questions were I know how to do them because I studied them the night before. So actually, did some more of that, and I was like, yes, happy. So that one of the last questions now was basically is you get a certain set of drawing on a paper with a certain specification. So you get the 2D version of the drawing. So you get like a side view, a top view, and like a bottom view. I don't really remember what they call. And then what you have to do now on your drawing sheet was draw the 3D version of that object, given the specification. So basically, I'm looking at it and I studied the night before, but when I actually look at it, it was really hard to really tell what it was. But I kind of was confident with what I was drawing. So I started drawing it and whatnot, and then boom, the time is coming close. And then I never had like a big rubber. So meanwhile I'm drawing, and almost finished, I saw one of my friends that was in, and this person is doing this as their profession. Like, as I said, he was in mechanical technology. So I went over him to borrow a rubber. When I borrowed the rubber now and look at his thing now, I realized that, yo, I was doing everything wrong. I was doing everything. I was drawing everything. Drawing that thing wrong. I'm like, what? But I started looking at his thing. I'm like, what, bro? So, yo, what I did, I was stand there, taking my time, take out the rubber and just trying to absorb as much information as I could. Then when I went back, I just start changing up and just start doing it. And then, mm, that exam was wild, bro. That was a wild exam, and then eventually I finished, pass up everything, and then okay, done. The next part now was the multiple choice, and that part now is where I kind of try to capitalize, get as much marks as I can, because I can't really put my trust in my drawing skill. I have to just get as much as I can on the multiple choice. Yeah, went in, did pretty well, came out, and funny enough, I got a 2, which was close to a 1. So getting a 2 would be like you're getting 80 or around 80 to 70%. And that was pretty solid. That was pretty solid given all the circumstances that led up to that situation. So you know, it, that was one of the funniest exams, the funniest classes, due to how it was. It was basically like that class was basically like a free session for us because we barely went to the class. We barely went to the class, and somehow, some way, I got a 2 in the class, 2 in the final time. So everything worked out in the end. So I guess it's a very a daily, yeah. So that's it for basically for this episode. And thanks for listening. I look forward for the next episode.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.
The rain season, bro. The rain season because I've gotten to really experience the. One thing on this journey is that when things when like when things aren't going your way, and you have to be patient. You start to really experience things, like really truly experience things because during this waiting period. And I guess one of these new things that you learn to experience is this rain season, bro. Like, truly. It's, me and this rain season as a real love-hate relationship. And one of the main reasons is because I don't have a car, so I have to I'm walking, bro. You see me? I'm walking and basically like, taking like taxis and such. So like when the rain falls, it's a mess, G. It